Have you ever stumbled upon an old photograph and felt goosebumps run down your arms? As if that single frozen frame was whispering to you, telling you a story from a world you've never lived in, but somehow you can feel? That's the power of history captured in pictures. Words can fade, stories can be forgotten, but a photograph, one single moment, can hold more truth, more emotion, and more raw humanity than 100 pages of text. Today, we are going to explore unbelievable historical photographs that tell stories far beyond words. Pictures that shaped nations, changed societies, broke hearts, and healed wounds. Stay with me till the end, because the last image we'll uncover is one that changed not just history, but the future of all humankind. It was August 14, 1945. The streets of New York erupted with celebration. The Second World War, the deadliest conflict in human history, was finally over. In Times Square, people danced, strangers hugged, and tears of relief rolled down millions of faces. But there's one photograph that has become the symbol of that day. A sailor, overwhelmed by joy, leaning in to kiss a nurse he had never even met. In that kiss, the entire world saw a sigh of relief, a raw, unplanned moment of humanity after years of unimaginable destruction. This single picture, captured by Alfred Eisenstedt, became known as the kiss of victory. It wasn't about romance. It wasn't about two people. It was about the collective heartbeat of the world finally slowing down after years of chaos. Even today, when people look at that photo, they don't just see two strangers. They feel what the world felt in that moment. Peace. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine standing in a crowd of thousands, where everyone around you is raising their arms in salute to Adolf Hitler. The world is drowning in propaganda, and fear is everywhere. But in that sea of obedience, one man, just one, keeps his arms folded across his chest. He refuses to conform. That man was August Landmesser. His photograph, taken in 1936 in Hamburg, shows him surrounded by thousands of Nazi supporters, but he alone stands firm, arms crossed, face unyielding. This single image became a symbol of courage, of resistance, of the power of one person saying, "No, I will not be part of this." What makes this picture even more powerful is Landmesser's story. He had fallen in love with a Jewish woman, Irma Eckler, and for that, he faced persecution. His act of defiance wasn't just political, it was deeply personal. That photograph reminds us that even in the darkest of times, when the whole world seems to move in one direction, a single act of silent resistance can echo louder than 1,000 shouts. The next picture is one that still haunts people to this day. On June 8, 1972, during the Vietnam War, a South Vietnamese plane accidentally dropped napalm, a deadly chemical, on its own people. In the chaos that followed, photographer Nick Ut captured an image that shocked the world. It was the image of a 9-year-old girl, Phan Thi Kim Phuc, running naked down the road, her skin burning, her face twisted in terror. That photograph became one of the most famous war images in history. It brought the horror of Vietnam into the living rooms of millions of Americans. For the first time, people saw the raw, devastating truth of what war really looked like. Not soldiers, not victories, but innocent children suffering. The picture helped turn public opinion against the war. It showed that behind every battle, every strategy, and every headline, there are human lives destroyed. Kim Phuc survived. Today, she is an author and activist for peace. Her scars are still visible, but her story is proof that even from the ashes of horror, hope can rise. Sometimes, the most powerful weapons are not guns or bombs but ideas. In 1946, photographer Margaret Bourke-White took a picture that would become a symbol of an entire nation's fight for freedom. It showed Mahatma Gandhi, sitting cross-legged, peacefully spinning cotton thread on his wheel. At first glance, it looks like just an old man doing simple work. But that spinning wheel, or charkha, was more than just a tool. It represented India's defiance against British rule. By spinning his own thread, Gandhi was rejecting British textiles and calling for self-reliance. This single photograph carried the weight of a revolution. It showed the world that independence didn't always come from violence. It could also come from quiet resistance, patience, and dignity. When Americans saw that picture in Life magazine, they didn't just see Gandhi. They saw the face of non-violent protest, a man who chose simplicity as his sword. Fast forward to America, August 28, 1963. Over 250,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial. They came from every corner of the nation, black and white, young and old, united by one hope: equality. Standing before them was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His voice echoed through history as he delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. But perhaps just as powerful as his words was the photograph captured that day. King, standing tall before a sea of humanity, his hand raised, his face filled with determination. That image became the visual heartbeat of the American civil rights movement. It wasn't just a speech anymore, it was a dream etched into history. Whenever people see that picture, they don't just hear his words, they feel the weight of injustice and the power of hope colliding in one moment. Now let's jump to Berlin, Germany, November 9, 1989. For decades, the Berlin Wall had divided families, friends, and an entire nation. On one side, freedom. On the other, oppression. But then, on that cold November night, it happened. The gates were opened. People climbed the wall. They picked at it with hammers and chisels. And photographers captured the exact moment when young men and women stood on top of the wall, celebrating as East and West Berliners embraced for the first time in years. Those photographs became the symbol of freedom overcoming division. The wall, once an iron scar across Europe, became rubble at the feet of ordinary people who refused to be caged any longer. Even today, when you look at those pictures, you can almost hear the cheers, the laughter, and the sound of bricks falling as the world watched a nation heal. On July 20, 1969, humanity did the impossible. For the first time in history, a human being stepped onto the surface of the moon. Neil Armstrong's famous words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," were broadcast across the globe. But what truly made people believe it, what gave those words life, were the photographs. Images of Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin standing on the lunar surface, the American flag planted firmly in the grey dust, Earth glowing in the black sky behind them. Those photographs didn't just capture two astronauts. They captured the collective achievement of humanity. In that moment, the impossible became real. Every time we look at those images, we remember that human beings are capable of more than just fighting wars. We can also reach for the stars. Long before rockets and moon landings, two brothers from Ohio changed the world with wood, cloth, and determination. In 1903, on a sandy field in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, Orville and Wilbur Wright achieved the first powered flight in human history. The black and white photograph of their fragile plane lifting off the ground, just a few feet, just for a few seconds, marked the beginning of a new era. It might not look like much today, but back then, it was unthinkable. Humanity had dreamed of flying for thousands of years, and in that single photograph, the dream became reality. From that moment forward, the sky was no longer the limit. On May 29, 1953, two men, Sir Edmund Hillary of New Zealand and Tenzing Norgay, a Sherpa from Nepal, stood on top of the world. Literally. The photograph of them on the summit of Mount Everest was proof that human determination could overcome even the harshest challenges nature could throw. Freezing winds, thin air, deadly avalanches, and yet, they made it. That photograph was more than just a victory picture. It represented the indomitable human spirit. When the world saw it, people realized, if human beings could climb the highest peak on Earth, then maybe there was nothing truly impossible. Sometimes history bleeds in silence. In 1947, when British India was divided into two new nations, India and Pakistan, millions of people were forced to leave their homes. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, families torn apart, entire villages uprooted. Photographers captured haunting images, endless trains packed with refugees, families walking for miles with nothing but the clothes on their backs, and children crying in the chaos. One photograph stands out, a train overloaded with men and women, sitting on the roof, hanging off the sides, desperate to escape. It wasn't just a train. It was survival on wheels. That picture reminds us of the human cost of borders, of politics, of decisions made in offices but paid for in blood by ordinary people. Even today, when you look at those images, you don't just see refugees. You see resilience, courage, and the desperate hope for a better tomorrow. Now let's cross the ocean to America during one of its darkest times, the Great Depression. In 1936, photographer Dorothea Lange took a portrait that became the face of poverty. It showed Florence Owens Thompson, a mother of 7, her face lined with worry, her children leaning on her shoulders. The photo became known as the migrant mother. It wasn't staged. It wasn't glamorous. It was raw. A mother trying to hold herself together while the world around her crumbled. That one picture captured the suffering of millions of Americans. But it also captured something else: strength. Even in her eyes, weary as they were, you could see determination. The photograph shook the conscience of a nation and pushed the government to provide aid to struggling families. August 6, 1945. The sky above Hiroshima lit up with a flash brighter than the sun. A single bomb, little boy, reduced an entire city to ashes. In the aftermath, photographers documented the devastation. Shadows burned into concrete walls, skeletons of buildings standing over piles of rubble, survivors wandering dazed through a nightmare landscape. One image that seared itself into history was that of a child, badly burned, standing alone amid the ruins. That photograph forced the world to confront the terrifying power of nuclear weapons. It wasn't just a picture of destruction, it was a warning. Whenever we look at it today, we are reminded that humanity now has the power to destroy itself, and that such power should never be unleashed again. In March 1965, thousands of African Americans marched from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, demanding their right to vote. The photographs from that march, people beaten by police, blood on the streets, and yet, marchers still walking forward, shocked the world. One powerful image showed activists, arm in arm, walking together across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Behind them stood a wall of armed officers. That picture wasn't just about civil rights. It was about human rights. It forced Americans to ask themselves, what kind of nation do we want to be? Those images helped push the Voting Rights Act into law. Proof that photographs don't just record history, they can change it. In June 1969, outside a small bar in New York called the Stonewall Inn, history was made. Police raids on LGBTQ+ spaces were common, but this time, the community fought back. 4 days, protests raged in the streets. The photographs from those nights, rainbow flags waving, young men and women standing defiantly against police, became the birth of the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. One picture of 2 men, holding each other proudly in the chaos, said more than words ever could: we exist. We resist. We will not be erased. Finally, let's talk about a different kind of revolution: leadership. Photographs of women stepping into positions of power for the first time. Indira Gandhi in India, Margaret Thatcher in the UK, Angela Merkel in Germany, Kamala Harris as the first female vice president of the United States, are more than just portraits. They are milestones. They are proof that barriers can be broken, ceilings can be shattered. Every one of those images tells the same story. The world is changing, and leadership no longer has one face, one gender, or one definition. We've just traveled through time. From the streets of New York on Victory Day, to the silent defiance of a man refusing a Nazi salute, from the haunting eyes of a mother during the Great Depression, to the triumphant smile of Neil Armstrong on the moon. Every one of these photographs has something in common. They are frozen moments that speak louder than words. Think about it. Wars end, leaders rise and fall, nations are born and destroyed. But photographs, they last. They are proof. They are memory. They are truth. When we look at these unbelievable historical pictures, we don't just see faces and places. We feel them. We feel the relief of peace, the courage of defiance, the pain of suffering, the triumph of achievement. A speech can inspire, a book can teach, but a single photograph can change the way the world sees itself. The picture of the napalm girl in Vietnam didn't just shock people, it helped end a war. The image of Martin Luther King Jr. at the Lincoln Memorial didn't just show a man, it showed a dream. The photo of Berliners tearing down the wall didn't just capture a night, it captured the rebirth of freedom. These are not just stories of the past. They are lessons for the present, and warnings for the future. If you've stayed with me till now, here's the truth: the most important historical photograph has not been taken yet. Why? Because it's waiting for us. Every photograph we've seen today tells us that ordinary people, like you, like me, are the ones who create history. Every act of kindness, every act of courage, every stand against injustice. These are the moments that one day, someone will capture. And maybe, years from now, people will look at our photographs and say, this was the moment humanity chose hope over hate, peace over war, unity over division. The next time you look at an old picture, don't just glance at it. Listen to it. Because every photograph has a voice, and every voice has a story. These unbelievable historical pictures don't just tell us where we've been. They remind us of where we are, and where we could go. And that, my friends, is the story beyond words.